Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Elite, episode 72, where we're going to discuss everything defunct about professional wrestling. and thank you guys for joining us. Very excited for all y'all to be here tonight, joining us live on this awesome Thursday evening, the eve of my birth. Yes, I had to put it out there. Tomorrow's my birthday, and
25 tomorrow.
Yeah, 21. So I'm very excited. Yeah, 21 times 2. I had my birthday tomorrow. So on the eve of my birthday, we're doing this show. Very excited to be doing it on Thursday night. And this topic, it was technically in my notes about, hey, what can we talk about? And I figured defunct wrestling. Let's just talk about it. Let's just shoot on defunct wrestling. And starting off the show with me tonight is always the man who knows too much for any of us, Mr. Jason. Jason, how you doing, bud?
All that useless knowledge floating around in my head. I'm doing well. I mean, it's a shame that we're so far away from each other, and I couldn't have easy access to come spank you tomorrow. But
ooh, don't tease me. Don't tease me with a good time, sir. I'm very excited. Tomorrow's my birthday. Just a normal day. I'll be working normally, and then going.
What happens when you get grown, right?
I mean, you don't really do much except for work and then eat and just relax. That's all you do now. But yeah, no. Man, my throat. But yeah, no, I
didn't mean to get you excited with that spanking comment like that, man.
You kind of did, yeah.
I'll refrain.
Yeah, no, so this topic has been kind of stewing in my mind for a while. We have talked about many topics about, former promotions, little promotions, independent promotions, the territories, all that stuff. But I really want to dive deeper into it and kind of talk about just like memories of what we remember from defunct promotions. I mean, everybody knows a lot of them, WCW, ECW, but there's other ones that a lot of people don't remember. Jason, outside of like the big promotions, what are some of the fondest memories you have of either territories or promotions of you growing up that aren't even around anymore?
Well, I mean, just about every territory I ever watched. I mean, it's kind of where the idea that I'd sent you for another show about the wrestling that we grew up on, what made us fall in love with professional wrestling. And, as much as I like Jim Crockett Promotions, which is what I grew up on, for my money, the best feud, and I said it when we interviewed Kevin Von Erich, was the original Freebird Von Erich feud on World Class Championship Wrestling. And if you haven't never watched World Class, to go back and watch it, you can see just how ahead of their time they really were. Mike's around the ring, camera guys standing on the ring, Mike's under the ring, the music and everything. They gave you a lot of what you see today, and, do not get near the credit that they deserve. And, it's been said, I mean, in a lot of different documentaries that before Vince went global, that's what the boys wanted to do. And Fritz said no, that he wouldn't go infringe on other people's territory. And if he'd have said okay and move forward, we might be looking at a different landscape in professional wrestling if World Class had been the first to try to go global.
Yeah, I was very ashamed that I never grew up in that time of World Class Championship Wrestling. I grew up with it when it became WCW and kind of dropped this extra C. And so I was very upset that I didn't grow up that, because it seems like it was just a really good time to watch the promotion and some of the stories and the feuds that you would have with that. And they had the Harley races, the Ric Flairs and all that stuff, and, and the Von Erich. So it seems like just a missed time that I had that I miss, that I wish I could have grown up with that territory.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever went back and watched any on the network, but if you go back and watch some early stuff, they remind me a lot, honestly. And they were around longer, of course, in ECW with the Texas wrestling and stuff like that. But they had a fire period there for a little bit of time until, Kerry won the title. They took it away from him 18 days later. And, Fritz started to have some hard feelings with the NWA, and then he pulled out. And that's kind of when they went downhill and things started to go awry for them. But they had that period where they were just on fire for about 5-6 years. And then, of course, we know what it turned into. They sold to Jerry Jarrett, turned into the USWA, and then it was just a forgotten memory. But, like I said, it could have been a different landscape if they'd went global when they were as popular as they were.
Yeah, I mean, going through a list here and just seeing some of these promotions that had the association, kind of an association with the WCCW and all those territories. I mean, you just mentioned it, the USWA and again WCCW. I mean, and then Smoky Mountain. We talk about Smoky Mountain constantly because a lot of those guys from those promotions also traveled to Smoky Mountain with Jim Cornette.
Yep.
So I mean, bringing that up, I mean, you look at all those promotions, kind of all these guys, just traveling there with no contracts. I mean, do you think nowadays, I mean, do you think contracts really put a damper on the idea of, guys just going to different promotions and just wrestling?
Well, you got to go back to the 90s to where things changed. I was one that always was just shaking my head that Eric Bischoff put Hulk Hogan versus Goldberg on TV. Like, why would you do that? Why, build it up for a pay-per-view, build it up to put asses in seats. And, just a little bit of, I think they started advertising on Thursday for the Georgia Dome on Monday, and they still winded up with 40,000 people in the Georgia Dome for that match. But I when I heard him talk about it, he's like, people always give me a hard time for doing this, but what they didn't understand was we were no longer a wrestling company. We were a television company. We were owned by we were a television product, and that's what they wanted. It's like I've said with AEW now, when everybody wants to go on and, my thing is very rarely do I comment on stuff that people do, but, like people will post a picture of the arena half empty, whether it's trolling or whether it's like, I'm worried for you. I don't care either way. Just don't do it. Are you there? If you are, enjoy the show. If you don't enjoy the show, then don't go. I mean, but at the end of the day, it's like I said, I mean, Warner Brothers Discovery, they could give a shit if 10 people's in that audience, as long as people's watching the television show. And, that kind of changed over from, kind of started once Turner bought it. And, one of those pages the other day, somebody was, talking about, they thought Swerve was wrestling too much as champion, which I happen to agree with, but that's a different story for a different day. And the comments, and I had to laugh. Somebody's like, "Oh, you must have grown up in the Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns era." And I literally started laughing looking at that. I'm like, because we've talked about it. That's one of the reasons I never had an issue with Brock or Roman as champion, was because I grew up with Hogan and Flair and Dusty, traveling all around. And, you would see him in World Class. You would see him, the NWA traveling champion. You would see him in Memphis on the show with Jerry Lawler when they, different places that they would go to, and they did their job. They'd go in there and take, Jerry Lawler, for example, take their, Memphis's top guy, make him look like he should be the world champion, but then leave with the belt. And, they would sell that angle to get people in the Memphis Coliseum or in the Sportatorium or in Texas Stadium, wherever you might want to go. And it's the contracts. I'm glad for the guys and the girls that they get that guaranteed money, and that they get hurt, they're not worried about how they're going to pay their bills or how their kids are going to eat, because they're not getting paid. Plus they're injured. They can't go do another job. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side of it, and I could be completely off, but it just seems to me like the passion isn't there that it used to be when I was growing up. Those guys and girls that wrestled, even like we've talked about it before with Medusa Michelli and Sherry Bartel, those girls beat the shit out of each other, man.
Yeah.
And, whether they were managing, whether they were in the ring, they put their heart and soul into it. And there's just some that come out there that, to me, and it's just, again, wrestling's entertainment. It's opinion based. And, I'll never fault anybody for having a different opinion other than mine. But in my opinion, you can just see any show you watch. It's not everybody, but you can just see the ones that are just out there going through the motions, in my opinion. And I think that's what the contracts created.
Yeah. And, growing up, we talk about the earliest we remember, I mean, not even growing up, but like nowadays with technology, YouTube, online videos that circulated from old school wrestling. And I'm someone that likes to go back and watch like old territories and old promotions. And one that came up on my list of watching just because I wanted to was AWA, American Wrestling Association. And man, that dated back all the way to 1933. 1933 was like pre-AWA. It was like the creation of AWA. And
I don't think they went back that far, did they?
Well, it's predated. So basically, everything that went from 33 to 1960 was pretty much the build up to AWA. It was
Yeah,
all
the stories I've read on AWA, and again, it's just what you read, was that Vern created the AWA because they would not let him beat Luthez for the
Luthez,
NWA World title.
exactly, yeah. And so reading that, and then it basically kind of became this whole aura of the whole AWA NWA kind of thing, where it almost became like territories created out of it. I mean, it is crazy to think that territories could be created out of something that's already established.
Well, no,
I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, I mean, you saw it happen a lot, actually. I mean, look how many promotions were in Texas, because you'd have, like, God, I forgot who Fred was partnered with Ed. It was him and Ed McElmore running one of the offices in Texas, and they got pissed off at the other guy, and they split. And you had, instead of one promotion, you had, now you had two more in Texas instead of just the one. That became world class. Now, like I said, I can't remember who their other partner was that they got mad and separated from, but you actually saw that a lot. In yesteryear, that people would get mad and they'd kick somebody out and they'd start their own or attempt to start their own. Sometimes it'd work, sometimes it wouldn't. Jim Cornette creating Smoky Mountain Wrestling because he was tired of WCW. He was tired of what he was dealing with in WCW and Jim Hurd. So, it happened. It happened quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and it was crazy to think you going back all towards the old days of all these promotions and territories, mostly the territories, because back then it was territories. There wasn't much of like promotions. It was just territories. It was just areas that had certain stars in the area and compete with each other. I mean, but you look back and that was the one thing that I realized was the one name everybody talks about, big name in pro wrestling, Hulk Hogan. I mean, there was a time that he was in that NWA, AWA kind of joint territory, and he had a huge feud with Nick Bockwinkel. Like, I had to go back and watch that match. I was like, oh crap, that is Hulk Hogan. Like, he looks so different than when he was signed to WWE. And it blows my mind how many of these promotions kind of put these guys out there to get seen by someone like a Vince McMahon, not even a Vince McMahon, but maybe a Vince McMahon Sr. to kind of bring them in to Vince McMahon Jr., basically creating them.
Well, if you go back with that, Hulk Hogan actually had, he was doing the territories. He had done Florida and a couple other places, and they brought him into the WWF. One of the, like I said, watching WrestleMania 3, they're like, that's the first time Andre's ever been slammed. I'm like, I watched him do it in Shea Stadium. Shame guy. I watched him do it a couple times actually, but okay. When he was working for Vince Sr. is when the opportunity for Rocky 3 came along. And, Vince Sr. told him, you're a wrestler, not an actor. And if you go do this, you'll never work for me again. He's like, man, this is Rocky, dude. I'm gone. I'm going to go do this part. And when he got done with the movies, when he went to the AWA, and in that time when he was building up his good guy persona, because he'd always been the heel as Hulk Hogan, he created Hulkamania. He was doing the yellow shirts with Hulkamania on it. That was one of the big arguments he and Vern got into. Was he had left to go do a tour of Japan, and he got wind that Vern was still selling his merchandise. Because back in those days, you brought your own stuff. You had your own guy or girl watching your table while you were wrestling your match or doing whatever you were doing. And he found out Vern was still selling Hulkamania merchandise. And he's like, hey, brother, where's my cut? And Vern's like, what are you talking about? So that started the downfall. And if you ever and I'll get to Nick Bockwinkel in a minute, but one of the things that really hurt the AWA was they were pushing Hulk to the moon. And they hadn't decided whether they were going to put the title on him yet or not. And Vince Jr. called. And they, back then, they would do 6 to 8 weeks worth of TV in different places. And those matches for the house shows and everything had already been advertised because they had done those 6 to 8 weeks worth of TV to build it up. And Hulk was supposed to be in a cage match with Nick Bockwinkel in a bunch of different cities that the AWA were going to. And Vern, Greg Gagne's side of the story was that Vern, when he saw the note that Hulk Hogan was quitting, he thought it was somebody ribbing him. He didn't believe him. And he said they got to the night of the show and somebody called him like, dude, where the hell are you? He's like, I sent you a letter. I told you I wasn't coming. And, Gagne and Greg said, yeah, he goes, I told him on the phone, he goes, that's no way to do business, man. He goes, you're missing out on money. He goes, I understand that, and I'm really sorry, but the man's paying me more to sit at home than you guys were going to pay me to come do this, and I've got an opportunity that I'm going to take. And we see how that turned out. But it really hurt the AWA, and that kind of started their decline. Because I mean, if you look at all the territories that Vince robbed people, took from places, he gorged the AWA. I mean, between Mean Gene Okerlund, Bobby Heenan, Hulk Hogan, Sergeant Slaughter, I mean, all those big time names. I mean, he took from everywhere, but I mean, he gutted the AWA.
Mm. Yeah, it is amazing that once Vince McMahon Jr. had taken over WWF at the time from his father, he created something different, and basically you just see the end of territories. And when you built up through that, and then you go into the 90s, you get WCW, which kind of comes out of WCCW, and a little bit of NWA involved in there as well with some guys there. So I mean, it is amazing to see how once territories dispersed and were gone, and then you get these kilometers of promotions. So it goes from territories to promotions now. That you kind of see the big picture of, hey, we can do something different here with pro wrestling, and it's not like the olden days, with the rough and tough guys and it's now character driven and story driven.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, but I think one of the things that's missing, a couple of things, but for me, growing up the way I did and watching the evolution of the sport, you hear it all the time that the people that have become icons, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, The Rock, Steve Austin, people like that, they said, if you watch those people on TV, that's just who they were with the volume turned all the way up. And with the scripted promos, and I know that AEW's does it a little bit different, but with the scripted promos, and I would love to know if Drew McIntyre is doing his own thing right now, or if that's being written and he's just pulling it off that well. Because I mean, he's my favorite part of the show right now. I mean, I don't care who he's paired with. The stuff that Drew coming out of Drew McIntyre's mouth, like I said, I'd love to know if it's his own stuff or he's just able to pull it off that well and relay into who's writing for him what he's trying to convey in his promos. But I just without letting somebody go out there. I mean, Flair. I've heard Flair had an interview one time. He said one of the times he went back to WWE, he was supposed to go out and do something on TV, and they walked up and handed him a script. And he said, "What the hell do you want me to do with this? I can't remember why I walked in the kitchen, much less 3 pages of shit you want me to say. That's not how I do this." He goes, he just kind of tossed it, and what do you want me to talk about? Yeah, okay, got it, and went out there and did it. And it's like, yeah, you have movie stars that become icons over time with the legendary movies they do. Wrestling's different, that you got to connect with your fans on a weekly basis. And, like I said, Shawn Michaels was doing a lot of his own stuff. DX, that was the stuff they were doing in the back. They finally got the okay to do. And, so I hope with Triple H taking over that they're giving more leeway, more freedom instead of having to go, word for word on a script, because I don't think until that happens, I don't think we're going to see that next huge crossover star. I mean, I thought they did a phenomenal job over the course of the bloodline of really making Roman Reigns stand out. But when The Rock came back and they were standing in the ring together, he just felt less than. And I felt bad for him. I mean, because I saw it online. I wasn't the only one that thought that. He looked like Solo standing next to The Rock when Solo stood next to him in the ring. It was like, he just looked like somebody's lackey. He didn't look like the guy that we've been watching as champion for the past 3 years. And, I don't know how you can create that kind of star nowadays by sending them out there with a script that they probably half-assed don't believe in.
Yeah, and that's the thing when it comes to script, unscripted, and kind of the freelance of what professional wrestling is now, especially back in the days of the territories and old school promotions where it just seemed like there wasn't a script, and it was just how passionate those guys were on the mic and how their characters were. And you really didn't know at that point. Obviously, we talked about kayfabe, all the time as pro wrestling fans, and what's on the line of between being real and what's not. And side note, I mean, they're coming out with a documentary about the build up to that WrestleMania 40 pay-per-view with Rock, Cody, Roman, all that stuff, and Seth. They're showing, they're opening the curtain to see behind that, which is crazy, to think that now we're going to get to see how it was operated. But I mean, back then with these territories and the earlier promotions, you didn't get to see it because you felt it was real, and as a fan you loved it. You loved growing up on those past territories and past promotions that aren't around anymore, and be like, this is what professional wrestling should be.
Yeah, it's like we've talked about before. I mean, that and what I think's missing today personally is the soap opera aspect. And what I mean by that is, when it's not, you can go through the shows, and WWE did well with it leading up to WrestleMania, but this is kind of over now, and we're headed back up for back to SummerSlam build now. But you don't find any of them to where it goes off the air and you're like, oh God, I can't wait to see next week. Because it's just going to be same shit, different day. And whether you like it or not, it's not what I mean. I'm not shitting on the products. It's just, they don't leave you hanging to see, with a fight being broke up or how to lead up to a match. It's just, the main event happens, you get a 1, 2, 3, you get a tap out, whatever the case might be. You might get a run in. And on a side note, one of the things that I hate about today's wrestling is when somebody does a run in and their music plays. It's like, I cannot stand it. It's like, oh no, we didn't know he was going to come out, but you're going to make it much more obvious that everybody knew he was going to come out and play his music.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy. But again, it's like, all those territories you go back and watch, and 9 times out of 10, when they went off the air at the end of that hour or 2 hours, whatever they were on television for, there was a cliffhanger there to make you want to tune back in at, 11 o'clock Saturday morning next week, or like for WCW Saturday night, like every time Flair would wrestle on WCW Saturday night or whatever it was called when he was on there, when he would wrestle, 9 times out of 10, unless it was against a jobber, you knew he was going to lose. Because that's the way they always set him up in a tag team match, or somebody, in an unsanctioned match, go up there and like roll him up and count 1, 2, 3, whether it was, a legit match or whatever. That's the way they set up his next opponent, being the heel champion. And, he would be screaming and hollering as the show would go off the air, or they're picking up somebody off the ground because the Horsemen or the Road Warriors have done beat the hell out of somebody. It made you, well, I need to see what happens to those guys next week. And we don't have that anymore.
Yeah. And it's not just that, but also like since the dawn of the Attitude Era, because we're going to get into a certain type of wrestling here that you don't see much anymore except as gimmicky, and that's hardcore wrestling. Obviously created by ECW once they branched off from the NWA and changing from Eastern Championship Wrestling to Extreme Championship Wrestling. In the 90s, they changed the whole face of professional wrestling and just doing hardcore every time. I actually just recently watched a documentary. It wasn't much of a documentary, but it was more so just a video thing with Maven. If everybody remembers Maven from the WWE, he has a YouTube series, and he actually just had a little sit down with Devon, and they went over the mass transit incident about the kid who claimed he was over 18, knew how to wrestle, but he was actually 17. And so, he sat down and he even asked Devon, he goes, how much hardcore was ECW? He goes, every match was contested in hardcore rules. Doesn't matter if it was a lucha match. It doesn't matter if it was a regular singles match or tag match. Everything had hardcore involved in it. So you get that change of style in the early 90s with ECW. I mean, from your perspective, do you think that was a good thing or a bad thing for a hardcore company to just come around and just change the face of everything?
For what they were doing, I mean, I think Paul Heyman said it best in his Hall of Fame speech. He said, we weren't built to last. We were built to change the industry. And they did. I mean, there's, like I said, hell, they wouldn't even put them on pay-per-view before 9 o'clock because of the language and the nudity they would show in some of those pay-per-views. But you know, I don't mind it to a point. For what they were doing, you know, it was fine. But if you're trying to run a regular wrestling promotion, whether it be a WWE, whether it's an AEW, if you're trying to run a big promotion, in my opinion, you can't do that shit every match. You can't have somebody pulling out a table. You can't have them pulling out a chain. Because you can't have, you know, Moxley, then Jericho, and Person X bleed back to back to back, because it just doesn't mean shit. I mean, by the time you've seen the third one start to do it, you're just bored. I mean, it's like it's the same thing every match. And, you know, one of the things people really appreciated about the height of ECW was that when he brought in Jericho, Malenko, Guerrero, Juventud, and they were out there actually wrestling without the hardcore. They were wrestling matches. And the ECW audience ate it up. And I mean, you can go back and watch any shows, any of their pay-per-views, you know, that audience was not sitting there quiet. They were not sitting on their hands. They were into those wrestling matches. And, you know, like I said, it depends on the performer, but when you can get a guy like MJF, who I was so glad to see him come back. But you know, I'll use him for an example. Everybody's like, oh, you need that kind of stuff. No, you don't. If you've got the right guy, you can get I mean, he got the crowd to pop for a body slam. I can't remember the exact match it was, but he got the crowd to pop and cheer for a body slam. And then when he and Adam Cole were doing all their stuff, he had the crowd chanting double clothesline. It's not about the moves; it's about the performer and how they perceive stuff. And you know, so like I said, ECW showed that yes, the hardcore stuff could be integrated, but it also showed going down as quick as they did that, you know, it's not it. Paul Heyman said it; they weren't built to last. And you know, so those companies have taken some of ECW, and that's fine. But like I said, I hate to see matches that are just thrown together for TV, and then the guys want to jump off a ladder or put somebody through 3 tables without a build up to it. It's like, I don't mind them doing that stuff, but just give me a reason on why you want to hurt this other guy or other girl so bad. What did they do to you? Instead of just, hey, tonight on Dynamite, we've got X versus X. You know, why? I need the why. And that's where a lot of the stuff nowadays, I mean, I don't change the channel, but I'll get up and walk away. I'll go start runs. That's why I don't get on the live reactions with you guys, because I multitask. Something comes on, I'm like, and I get up and walk away. You know, start doing something else.
Yeah, I think we have talked about that so many times in our podcasts about the whole why and why should we care about this story, or, you know, okay, and now what, you know, and then what, you know, following with it. You know, we talk about it with every promotion. I mean, yeah, we're hard on AEW, but it's only because we want to see them be successful. But they got to follow that pattern of, okay, you got me invested in this, but why? And then what comes next? And that, for me, for ECW, for me, I thought it was a good alternative because I've never seen anything like it. And this was, for me, growing up as a kid, between the Monday Night Wars of WCW and WWF at the time, I had never seen anything like ECW. I mean, I remember my week exactly. Monday, I would watch, you know, between, you know, Nitro and Raw. And then Friday nights, I would stay up late, and on one of the local channels had ECW on at like 10 o'clock. And I would watch that on Fridays because, remember, SmackDown didn't premiere until 1999. So I didn't get to watch SmackDown on Fridays. I watched ECW on Friday nights. So the fact that, you know, it was a different alternative and it had its audience, you know, and it was a little extreme, you know, but it wasn't storyline based. You know, they try to do it. And there were some good feuds, and they try to make it story-wise and make you care, you know, i.e. Sandman and Raven, or Tommy Dreamer and Raven, and, you know, and the Dudley Boys and this group. Like, it got you involved a little bit, but there was no then what? How do we follow this up?
Well, the thing I'll say about ECW too, and this is not a knock on any of those guys or girls, but I'll use Shane Douglas as an example. Where else did Shane Douglas get over? Nowhere.
True.
And they even let him do his franchise character in WCW when he came back. But if he wasn't talking about, you know, banging woman or Francine or whoever he had with him at the time, and, you know, F-bombing over and over again on the microphone, Nobody cared. And if you go back, I loved Raven and Dreamer, but again, Raven's another one. Where did he get over outside of ECW? I loved the Raven character in ECW, but nobody knew how to write for it other than Paul Heyman. Nobody knew what to do with it. And this is not a knock on any of those guys or girls. And correct me if I'm wrong, or if you disagree. But Taz has become a legend with his broadcast. He didn't have that great of a run in WWE. But aside from the Dudley Boys, not all those guys and girls are ECW legends. Don't get me wrong. Outside of ECW, how many can actually be considered legends? Because Eddie came from Japan and Mexico. Some of those guys were already established, but and if you were a tape trader, you knew who they were. Jericho got his start, and then he went to Smoky Mountain with Lance Storm as some kind of ripoff of the Rock and Roll Express. But if you go back,
what's your take on this? I mean, Rad said Raven in TNA was pretty good. Do you think his run in TNA was better than his ECW run?
Better than ECW, no, but his TNA run was much better than his WCW or WWF run.
Okay,
and that's not even. I'm not throwing his Johnny Polo days or Scotty Flamingo or any of those characters in there. I'm talking about his Raven runs. Yeah, TNA, the stuff with James Mitchell and when they did the hair versus hair stuff, and like Mitchell had the clippers too close and basically scalped Raven on TV. That was pretty rough, man. I was watching that going, ooh, geez.
Oh, I was too. I was like, ooh, he got him.
Yeah, but somebody wrote down there, I loved Raven. I loved Raven in ECW. And then when he came over, it's like it was very obvious that they did not know what to do with him. And like I said, Shane Douglas, the champion forever there, he did great in ECW with what he was allowed to do, but everywhere else they went. And I'm racking my brain. Like I said, Taz had okay, but he made his mark for the current fans and everything, as a broadcaster. And, I didn't think he would do well in WWE, not because of Taz, just because of his size. I mean, he's 5 foot tall and 6 foot wide, but, and being that short, I knew Vince wasn't going to do anything with him. And what he did okay, but his announcing is what made him a household name. So I'm like I said, I'm racking my brain. The only ones that I can think of that reached legendary status outside of ECW was the Dudley Boys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, with that, since we're on the topic of Extreme Wrestling and the name of Shane Douglas, I don't know if a lot of people remember, but there was a Defunct promotion that he tried in 2012 to kind of fill the void of missing ECW. It was called Extreme Rising, and it only lasted like 2 years, and they only had like 3 champions, one of which, the first one was Stevie Richards, and then the second one, I believe, was Luke Hawx, which he doesn't do much anymore. He was in Extreme Pro Wrestling as Altar Boy Luke. And then, their last champion was Matt Hardy, and that was in 2014. For that, I mean, what were your thoughts on that of someone like Shane Douglas, who was a big star in ECW? That's it. What do you think of some of these guys who try to start their own promotion, but it doesn't last?
I think in order for you to do that, you got to have. I don't mind anybody trying to make a buck. Let's just, and if you've got the right backers and you've got the right buildings, but it goes back to what we discussed a little bit ago about TV deals. If you want to start something locally and have, Adams Automotive Service as your sponsor and just something like, once or twice a month at the local high school gym or bingo hall or whatever you might be. And, just make a little extra pocket change, give the guys and girls another stop on the indie tour that they can do and make some money and get some ring work, because I think that's what's really missing these days is actual in front of a crowd ring work. It's great that they have the training facilities they do now, but, there's just so much that goes into it. And it's like we've talked about before, that people give us such a hard time for our criticism of AEW. But at the end of the day, if AEW fails, we're not going to see another major promotion probably in our lifetime. Because, we've talked about it. If a billionaire can't make it work, who am I to try to do this stuff? And I love watching people be successful and bring back some old stuff that, maybe that, WWE or AEW don't want to put on TV or TNA. That's fine. But, I don't want them to go broke in the process because it's just out of a whim. Oh, I'm bored. Let me try this. Don't empty your savings on something that's not going to give you a return on your investment.
Right. I agree. And actually, I wanted to answer Morgan here real quick, guys. The only interview I know that we have, I don't know if there's been more. That's another counter question, but we do have a Sabu interview from a long time ago. It was one of like the earliest interviews we've done on here on this podcast. But I know he's been on there. I know we're probably trying to get more. Oh, Blue Meanie. So another one we just recently had. So we've had those two on there. And again,
Sabu's another one. I mean, what did he do outside of ECW?
Yeah, Sabu's another one. But yeah, no, those are some of the interviews we've had so far. And then it's just crazy to think that it's not only hardcore wrestling, but there was a lot of lucha wrestling, like a lot of promotions that just never made it. I mean, granted, we still have CMLL, I guess AAA. I mean, they're still going strong as far as integrating the lucha libre kind of style of wrestling, and even AEW and maybe a little bit of WWE sometimes integrated in there. I know AEW does it quite a bit, with the guys they bring in. I mean, look at last night. I mean, Mystico came in, to wrestle in that gauntlet. I mean, do you think we should be getting more lucha promotions, since a lot of them don't last too long?
Well, it goes back to talking from the business side of it. You got to do your research. Why didn't they last too long? It's like everybody says, oh, they ran WCW out of business. WCW could still be going strong today, whether it still was owned by Turner or if Bischoff's group would have bought it. It was the highest rated show that Turner had at the time. That, those executives just did not want it. We've discussed that before. And so it's a matter of, before new promotions pop up or trying to do, I mean, you've still got indie promotions everywhere. God, Texas, every city probably has one. And a lot of it is lucha because, right there being on the Mexico border. But again, if you're gonna try to start a promotion, you got to figure out why the other ones failed and where you can succeed. I mean, I told you before, if my dad gave me $100 million, God bless Tony for starting AEW, but I wouldn't start a wrestling promotion. It's a risky business. My fat ass is by an island somewhere. So, I mean, it just depends on if they think they can succeed where somebody else failed.
Yeah, no, I can kind of agree with that. I mean, I do remember I feel like it also has to do with how you run it as well. Because, I mean, if you look at something like Lucha Underground, which I'm always high on. I loved Lucha Underground. If anybody's ever seen it, you need to. A lot of people came from there, guys that are in WWE and guys that are in AEW right now. A lot of them came from Lucha Underground when it went out. And for me, it was more so the behind the scenes of a lot of the wrestlers also filed lawsuits against Lucha for being too unsafe or, not taking care of their wrestlers as the way they should, or even not even that, just not giving them freedom, having these contracts that kind of hold them to this. It's, and it's nothing against WWE. WWE has that where, 90 days you can't do anything, you can't compete. It's a non-compete clause. Where AEW is, if you leave, you're free to do whatever. I think I will say that that's my only thing with the contracts. The only thing I like with AEW is they're not going to hold you 90 days where you just sit around and do nothing. Obviously some of the WWE guys, though, they can still do their signings and do appearances as like for fans, but they can't wrestle.
And I hear you, but I will say is like, especially if it's somebody that's been on the grind for a while, you're still getting paid for those 90 days.
Right.
So some might look at it as a welcome vacation and like, if you don't have, if you're AEW, you get released from AEW or whatever, then, a lot of those guys and girls are not the big time stars aren't getting released. But let's talk about, just one of the people that's been around for a little bit. But the one thing I like about the 90-day no compete is if it's one of the mid card people, that they might be wanted somewhere, they might not. It gives them 90 days to put feelers out and still get paid without worrying how their bills are going to get paid. They're still got that paycheck coming in for 90 days. They can take 2 weeks off and then get back into the grind on what they need to do, or they can take the full 90 days off if they've been smart with their money, like Ole Anderson was. But
you're right.
But you talk about how successful all the territories used to be, and they weren't competing for the same audience. They were competing in their part of the little, their little piece of the pie, and they were very successful in Memphis and Texas and everything to that nature. But like AEW and WWE, even though it's wrestling, no matter how the same or how different they are, they're competing for the same audience. And those territories didn't have that to worry about. That was the unspoken agreement of, hey, you stay in your neck of the woods and I'll stay in mine. And they were able to fill that, and whatever TV station they were on, they got good ratings. I mean, like I said, Ted Turner, he said for years that he built his business off pro wrestling and Braves baseball. He became a multi-billionaire because of it. And that's why he was also always so, gracious for the wrestling business. And that's why he bought Crockett Promotions and turned it into WCW. He was grateful to the wrestling business, and, it operated in the red for a long time, and he didn't care. He kept it going. There was rumors that it might shut down if it didn't start turning a profit, because by that time, he had more people to answer to and talk to, but it was still ultimately his decision. And, so, talking about opening more promotions, I'm not sure that's sustainable. I mean, people are talking about AEW's ratings, and again, if you like it, fine. If nobody watching it, that's just enjoy the show. But with those ratings being discussed on a weekly basis, it's like, is there really enough people out there that are going to watch it to sustain a business and actually get another wrestling contract, or TV contract, I should say? And speaking of people taking care of their performers, did Tony ever pay CM Punk's medical bills? So we got an update on that.
You know what? That's one thing I've always wondered, is if those medical bills were paid. Knowing the money he has, it was probably the last goodwill thing he did for CM Punk before firing him.
No, you don't remember that interview that CM Punk did a bit ago?
Yeah. Oh man, you honestly had me on a go here. I go, oh wait, no, it wasn't an interview. Good Lord.
Yeah, where CM Punk said that he paid for his own medical after that.
Yeah.
And then Tony come back, said, I'll have to check about that. We pay for our people's stuff, but if we didn't pay for it, I'll make sure he gets the money. I want to follow up, man. Did Tony pay you or not? Inquiring minds needs to know.
Connor might know. Connor, do you know if Tony paid those bills? He's muted. You're muted, bud.
Come on, man.
He might have paid it. I don't know. I doubt it. I doubt they've had any contact with each other, but I don't know. You never know. But he probably must have. I don't think he cares anymore at this point.
Jesse commented AEW needs to figure out what they want to be and stick with it. And I've been saying that for months. Part of the show look like they want to be ECW. Part of the show look like they want to be New Japan. Then you'll have something that looks like they want to be this, they want to be that. It's like, get you a format and stick with it. I agree 100%.
And Rad, to answer your question, yes, Ted Turner's still alive, but he's very, very old now.
I'm sorry, he's got to be damn 85,
he's got damn near 95 years old, 96.
I know I've seen one time that he has dementia. Now he's not really doing too well, but yeah, he's like 85 years old now. I'm surprised he's still alive. Yeah,
but no, Connor, go ahead. To finish what you were saying, and then a question I was, we started the show off with was, is there like something that in the past that you remember seeing that's not even around anymore?
A lot of people probably won't remember this, or you might. Well, Memphis wrestling, like there was the Mid-South Coliseum version, but what I grew up on was the Corey Macklin version of Memphis wrestling. It was like on channel 5-3 Fox, maybe.
There's a new version of that out now too,
Yeah, Championship Wrestling from Memphis. Chris is all. I've been there too many times. You can probably watch some of them, and you can still see me in a lot of them. But it was the Corey Macklin version. They had Jerry Lawler on there, Jimmy Hart. That was something I always enjoyed watching, because as a kid, I didn't get Raw or TNA. Like the only things I got on TV was Friday Night SmackDown and Memphis Wrestling. And those were the two things I'd watch. But that's not around anymore. Because one, Jerry Lawler didn't want to be a part of it anymore, and two, Corey Macklin's dead. What else? I don't know. I mean, WWE's still around. I mean, I watched that back in the day. I mean, for me, everything is pretty much still around. Besides that, but yeah, I mean,
and that's the thing. Do you think like the people that watch like they're watching this stuff that grew up on the old school stuff with their kids? It's like you know, when I was growing up, I mean, let me tell you about our promotions and like our territories that we grew up with. I mean, do you guys still feel like that's it, or do you guys think it's just been blinded by these big promotions like AEW, WWE, TNA?
I wish TNA was bigger. Like I said, I would love to watch it every week. And I will say that I don't get surprised much, but I was pleasantly surprised twice watching NXT Tuesday night.
Oh yeah,
because I was sitting there watching, and Roxanne's in the ring, and I'm like, okay, it's been long enough. Give me Mandy. Come on, Mandy. Let it be Mandy. And then Jordan Grace come out. I'm like, oh, never mind. I'll take that too. And
I thought it was Scott Steiner at first, but she's
and then they bring Ethan Page out at the end, and it's I mean, this is going to sound like I'm shitting on AEW. I'm really not, but I mean, they threw him right up like he's the champion, and like they did more with him in 90 seconds than AEW had done the whole time he was there. And it's just like, good for you, brother. Good for you. And
I will say, just to add on to that, TNA just announced they're calling their stuff premium live events too. They just announced one the very next weekend after Battleground. And it's been reported that there's going to be some NXT representation.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, there's going to be some NXT presentations at the TNA Premium Live event. I don't know what that's going to be, but on Twitter, Drew McIntyre and Moose was kind of going at it a little bit. There's just some people, kind of, I like to go get this person. I want to go get this person. Maybe they'll do more with it. But they said that Jordan Grace got paid in 6 figures.
Just for 3 appearances, yeah.
Yeah, just for that appearance. She's getting paid a lot of money. So I hope they do more with that. I'd be really excited to see like Josh Alexander and really I want to see put Chad Gable on NXT for one night and Chad Gable and Josh Alexander. But I'm really intrigued at what that's going to be in the next few weeks or months.
I'll tell you, I'm curious. So I don't know if AEW and New Japan have a contract or not. But if they do, so be it. But if the contract expires and WWE reaches out and makes them an offer, because from what I read, New Japan's not doing near as well as it used to. And, if they're really trying to work with these different promotions, you might see them dry up real quick and head the other way if the price is right. But while I'm thinking about it, though, one thing I missed from it wasn't when I was a kid, but I was a teenager. You know what I really miss? Primetime wrestling. I loved primetime wrestling.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know what that was what was on USA Network on Monday nights before Raw. Now, I think, was it 93 when Raw started going live?
93 was Raw. Yeah, the very first Raw was 93.
But Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan were just phenomenal together. The banter that those two had, and it wasn't, and it wasn't much. They were just showing matches from over the weekend. They'd show some matches from Superstars, from Challenge. They'd show Piper's Pit or the Flower Shop, whatever talk show that they'd had that weekend. Brother Love show, whatever. But I loved primetime wrestling. I really did.
Yeah, it's those shows that you kind of grow up and you're like, God, I miss that. They're reminiscing of it. Connor, you were about to chime in?
Well, I was a kid. Wasn't really live TV, but I had a lot of this VHS and stuff. Like, that's how I got into wrestling. Like, my dad had these old VHS. I didn't know what the heck they were. I've said it many times. I'll start out with TNA, I would say. I watched WWE first, but what got me intrigued was TNA. But I remember just watching these old the Coliseum cassettes, like they would come out with. I have the Hulk Hogan one. I have Randy Savage. I have a bunch of them. And I would just watch this old stuff. The commentator was boring. What's his name? He's from the UK. He was a commentator for WWE.
Oh, Lord Alfred Hayes.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was another one that Vince swiped from the AWA. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
It was one of the matches was Hulk Hogan and Jerry Lawler, and it was fun watching. But golly, he was. But I grew up on that stuff, and there was one show kind of like Prime Time, but it was like during the Ruthless Aggression era, and they would come on like on a random channel, and they would just go through like Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views. They would go over OVW as well, because at the time that was when WWE's developmental system was over in OVW, and they would show like people from OVW. Who was it? It was like Ryback was on there one time. I remember. I think Dolph Ziggler maybe. I don't know, but yeah, I miss stuff like that.
And there was another show that I'm not sure if you've ever seen, Connor. And Adam, I'm not sure if you remember this one or not, because this was when I was a kid. But the territories, and they even would do WWF, but every Saturday night, I want to say, it came on real late, or it might have been Sunday, but it was called Pro Wrestling This Week with Gordon Soley and Joe Pedicino. And they recapped, what had happened through that week in all the territories. I mean, every territory, Central States, whether it was just a 30-second, hey, this happened or whatever, they recapped 20 to 30 territories in that hour show. And I loved Gordon Soley. I mean, I'm not sure if he'd work now, because he didn't have that excitement that Jim Ross brought in the 90s, and what Excalibur and Tony and Michael Cole and all them do now, which I think goes a little too far sometimes, but that's just me. But I loved Gordon Soley back in the day, and especially getting older and finding out that he kept a bottle up underneath the desk. It was about half shithoused on every broadcast. But like I said, that's a show that I would love to like maybe recreate with some of you guys, or see recreated. Just take an hour every week and make notes on what happened in TNA, what happened in OVW, what happened in CMLL, AAA. Just news from New Japan. Quick rundown of Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, Collision. And, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. You got to see some people that, whether it was for a minute or 5, that you never got to see.
I mean, you kind of get that now with Busted Open Radio. I mean, they now introduce the whole, late night, like, recap of everything over the weekend. And then obviously on Saturdays, I don't know if they still do it, but, they would do the weekly winners, and they would talk about all the shows that would happen during that week, and basically say which show of the week was the best one. But I do like the idea that they had something like that when we were growing up. And that was something that we don't talk about a lot either, is developmental territories are almost like a thing of the past, because yeah, you could consider Ring of Honor and NXT as developmental programs, but they're still part of the overall umbrella of the company. I mean, do you guys think we would ever see any of these independent promotions, kind of like professional sports, be like, hey, you're not going to be under this umbrella to develop, wrestlers for our promotion? Do you guys think we'll ever see that?
I think there's just too much money to be involved in running these things and signing people up to do something like that. That's, like I said, that was the one thing about the territory system I missed, because I'm sure that performance center, from what I've seen on television and pictures, is just unbelievable to walk through and see. The equipment they have, the analytics they have, they can show the guys and girls on what works, what doesn't, but you never know what's going to work for you until you get in front of a live audience. And yeah, you're going to have a little push behind you, from the company, from the machine, as they like to call it. But, like we've talked about it, if you get on national TV and you flop, you're probably done. As far as major promotions go. But, back in those territory days, you could start off in Florida and just be booed out of the building, like, okay, that didn't work. And then you just go right up the road to Georgia and you figure it out a little bit more. Then maybe up the road to Mid-Atlantic, or across the country to Portland, or down in one of the Texas promotions, or to Minneapolis in the AWA, or one of the California promotions. And you had that time, and you had that, 50 to 200 people television audience telling you what was good and what wasn't. And I think that's really, to me, what's missing is they throw you out there on TV when they think you're ready. And of course I'm ready. Yeah. Don't cut me. I'm ready. Don't release me. I don't blame them for that, but they're not getting that, traveling around to the high school gyms and not being put on TV, being able to do stuff at house shows and figure it out that they used to have with the territory system. And, you can have as much developmental as you want. I just don't think it works as well.
Right. Connor?
I would like to see. I don't know if it ever could happen, but OVW being a developmental. I mean, I know WWE does have the Performance Center, which is a true developmental, but they just don't run their own. Well, technically they do. It's NXT, but I know sometimes they used to have like where they would invite the fans to the Performance Center to see their new trainees. Uh, it was on like I don't know what it was on. I think it was on a prank show. It was Swerve on WWE, but they showed an event where fans came to the Performance Center and they had lunch or something, and they could watch the trainees have matches and stuff. But NXT is kind of their developmental, but AEW, I don't know what they consider Ring of Honor. I don't know if it doesn't even feel like it's on brand anymore. It feels just like Ring of Dark. But I don't know. I feel like maybe TNA could have a developmental system over at OVW, considering they do use some of their talent. What is his name? What is the Indian guy on there? He was on the documentary from OVW.
Oh yeah. The guy who's their champion who lost to James Storm. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting his name.
He's in TNA currently. Like there's a few of them that's in TNA right now that still goes to OVW. Even Leela Gray, she's in AEW. She still goes there. So
I'm curious too with QT Marshall and of course Cody being gone. What training school they're even using now?
I thought QT came back.
Yeah,
from my understanding, he re-signed with AEW.
Did he?
I don't know
Okay,
if it was
I had not
or new.
I had not heard that.
Just not as a.
So okay, well, if he's back, then I'm assuming they're still using the Nightmare Factory then. But like when he left, I'm like, well, who are they going to use now?
I don't even think they use it anymore. It's just for. I know Cody still does some stuff there. Like every once in a while, like he'll post on his Instagram stories of him sitting around with a bunch of students and like watching film or something. But I know Glacier does some stuff there.
Ice runs cold.
Oh, I got a funny story about that I could tell you about.
Well, do tell. We are all ears, sir.
Yeah, we're all ears, Connor.
Don't tell Glacier this. He probably don't even remember it. But I tried to book him one time when I was part of a booking to actually book him for an event. He gave me his phone number on the thing. I was a kid at the time. Well, not a kid, not an irresponsible kid, but I I gave my friend his phone number and we called him, and then we heard his voice messaging machine and we acted like we were Vince McMahon. He never called us back, so he didn't think it was real. But I actually met Glacier a few times. He's really, really nice. I did mention that story to him. He probably don't remember. I was like 2014, 2015. But he's a really nice guy. I don't know. I'm guessing he's still the Nightmare thing down there. I know he was doing it at one point.
Well, I'll tell you another thing that I missed that, from being a kid, and I've told y'all about the guys that I got to meet when I was a child at the high school gyms and stuff because of the deputies we knew. And I understand, especially in today's society, why in coliseums that are 15, 20, 40,000 strong, why they're on their guard and whatever you might have it. But
that was the name that popped up on their heads in the voice answer machine.
But
this is Ray Fuller. Please leave your phone number and
Ray. But like I said, when I met Piper when I was 5, 6 years old, 7 years old, whatever it was, and he was making Wahoo bleed every week and beating the hell out of everybody. Him and Gene Anderson, just two of the nicest guys, and to this day, that I have ever met. And like I said, the good guys, they weren't nasty. They were kind of matter of fact. Yeah, here you go. Here's my autograph. And you don't really get to see them in a place like the cons. I mean, they got most of them have lines 50 long, and if not more, depending on who the star is. But you don't really get to see them in kind of a relaxed atmosphere to where they can just hang out. Oh, there's 150 people out there. All right, cool. We'll go out there and do our thing. But now it's all about the TV ratings, and it's like people talk about AEW with botches, and it's like, well, you know what? They've been botching for years. It's a live performance. They don't get a second take on it. It was like Paul Heyman was the first one with ECW. Going back to that didn't edit out the botch. He just let it. He left it in there. He's like, hey, we're human, man. This shit happens, and move forward. But now somebody, the internet sucks. That's what I say. Because, somebody makes a mistake. Could you go out there and do it? Or you're sitting on your beanbag naked eating Cheetos. What are we doing here? I mean, they're out there doing the best they can. You think they want to screw up on live TV? Shit happens, man. Nerves happen. I mean, boots get, slick. Ropes get sweaty. Things are going to happen. Nerves take over. So just, and like, I thought Will Ospreay had gotten killed at the damn pay-per-view. I was like, holy crap. And, he got up, thankfully, but I was like, that was just bad. So well, I don't even know where I was going with that, but it's just, I mean, like I said, I just don't, I think a lot of the stuff that I miss is, I don't think they should be doing what Devon Eriks had to do, coming to the ring with all those people wrapped around them and the sportatorium. But I do miss, with it being so national now and on the national spotlight of the guys and girls just being able to kind of relax with their fans with, 150, 200 seat arena and be a little on the laid back side.
Yeah, I think you kind of miss that, and you wish it was still like that. But as we're getting to the hour here, I guess I got to ponder this question. We talk about all these defunct promotions, the territories. I mean, there's still a lot of professional wrestling out there, and it's not just the big television time, promotions or even the international. There's smaller promotions throughout the states, and obviously nobody wants to see a promotion kind of lose its course and kind of go out, but it does happen. I mean, Jason, you did mention you have to look at the why they didn't work out or why they, are no longer around. So in your guys' thoughts, and again, this is just all hypothetical in your eyes, what you think, it might not even happen, but promotions now that are smaller, which one or which ones do you think you see right now that almost has run its course and you wouldn't be surprised if they close their doors sooner than later?
For me, it wouldn't be. Even though AEW is doing good, I don't see them ever going out. Like, they can go on their TV station if they wanted to. Like, they got the money, they got the resources. But I don't think it's TNA. But if it's one, it would probably be MLW. Just there's been a lot of stuff come out about that company. I mean, I know Devon Eriks came on here; they talked really good about it. Jake out Fatu and all that. But there's been a lot of stuff come out about over there, and they've lost a lot of money. I know that. So if I had to say one, it would probably be MLW, like the most realistic one. I mean, it could be OVW, but I think they're in a more stable position now since that documentary. But if I had to say one, probably MLW.
Yeah. What about you, Jason?
Well, yeah, I hope OVW is doing better because if you remember, go back to that documentary, the guy that owned it all or owned, most of it or had the, controlling shares, said he had lost money since he bought it, and that's what kind of goes back to what I said earlier about, securing a TV deal, seeing what failed, how you could do it better, and how long you could sustain without making any money. But I'd say MLW. I'm with Connor on that one. Or, well, they just got that $20 million from WWE, so hopefully they're okay for a little while. Or the NWA. I mean, look how long Billy Corgan's owned it, and he had, he basically said that without saying it, he wanted to do with the NWA what Tony Khan has been able to do with AEW. He wanted to get it on a national televised spotlight and, get it in big arenas, and it just seems like it keeps moving backwards daily.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost on the agreement of you guys with MLW. Although I do follow them on social media and they do promote the hell out of their promotion. I'm torn on that. But also I'm looking at another company, and like you said, that has been around a while, like you said, Jason, with NWA. But, someone like a PWG is still going strong. And it's amazing on how many good talents they had in the early 2000s or 2010s that are now to bigger promotions, WWE, AEW, yet they're still going. But they don't do a lot of big shows. They do the smaller, like almost like it's not even a big arena. It's like almost like a bingo hall kind of show like ECW used to run out of. And you're like, how much more can they sustain? They can't be making that much money with these shows. And, granted, they get, special appearances by former members of the PWG. But, at some point, it's kind of like, how much more can we sustain? So I might have to go with PWG as one of those promotions that, yeah, we've had some fond memories with it, but I mean, how much financially can they be sustainable going forward?
When was the last time they ran a show? Like, it's been a while, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, they're still going. I don't know if they still do the Battle of Los Angeles tournament that they've done. I mean, if you remember some of the earlier 2005s to 2010s kind of PWG, like they were in a very small gym. They were in a gym, like almost a gym bingo hall, like where they were doing their shows. And so, they're just relying on the money of the paying tickets, and so it's very hard to kind of define of how far can you go. And then, like Jason said, the NWA, we follow. You've known the NWA for a long time. They were around way before WWE took off to what it was, to forming with TNA and the NWA when WCW went out of business. But I can't remember the last time I heard, hey, PWG's doing really good as a promotion.
I haven't heard that name PWG in a long time. Like, the last time I remember, like, it was when JAS was together and Daniel Garcia was there, and Jericho showed up, and then the whole JAS was there. That was the last time I heard about them.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, that's I mean, I'm glad we got to this topic. And, as we're winding down here, I guess I want to move to something that we should have started up the show with, because it's Thursday and, we usually start the show with it, but I'll save it to the end because I'm sure we got a lot to say about it. But we had last night's Dynamite post Double or Nothing, which was a decent pay-per-view. I don't think it was bad. I don't think it was great. It wasn't their best, but it was a decent pay-per-view. I enjoyed it for the most part. Our fearless scumbag is back, MJF, with a new attitude, a new look. But I want to get your guys' thoughts on Dynamite last night. Connor, I know you always do the live reaction to it. So, I mean, we'll start with Jason, I guess, since, you do the live reaction, Connor. Jason, if you caught it last night, what'd you think of it?
I fast forwarded through a lot of it. Double or Nothing. I enjoyed Double or Nothing for the most part. It was too damn long. I don't think they needed the Jericho Hook Shibata match and the Orange Cassidy Trent Beretta match. I don't think needed to be on there. But last night it's like Sky Blue and Mercedes out of nowhere with, you got this shiny new penny, and that you're wanting to make you some money ratings wise or whatever they needed to do now. And you don't advertise Mercedes is going to wrestle. You just do it out of the blue. No pun intended to Sky. And then Sky laid down pretty quickly. I'm glad Chris Statlander finally turned. I'll be interested to see how this goes. And I saw Jack Perry set on fire. I saw the question. And I don't know how
Anna Jay wasn't the only one that was hot that night.
Maybe he got it. Maybe he got it from her. Who knows? But like with that match, for TV, it's fine watching the pay-per-view. I would hate to be in the audience for an Anarchy in the Arena match, because you're just sitting there, you can't see anything. The majority of the audience is sitting around going, where they at? Where they at? Where they at? Because there's nothing going on in the ring. So like I said, for TV, when they can give me 4 separate screens or keep switching back and forth, it's fine. But I would not want to be in the actual arena for that match. The Elite Light, as I like to call them now, boring segment to me. I think they are doing Swerve a very big disservice as champion. Since the time he got the belt, I thought they should have put it on him a little bit sooner. He kind of cooled down a little bit before he got the belt. And now they're putting him on TV every week. And, last week they had him wrestle Nick Wayne. If it had been a competitive match, not competitive match, I should say, and he just went out there and, ducked, kicked, pinned, and said, okay, you're next, Christian, or however you want to word it, one of his smart ass comments, so be it. But they put him in a competitive match against a 19-year-old kid. And this is supposed to be your world champion who's, arms above everybody else. And then last night they had him wrestle, and I was just like, what are you doing? And then, I knew as soon as Ospreay got the reaction he got when he came out, I'm like, all right, he's going to get the title probably sooner or later. But I was hoping when they put the international title on him at the pay-per-view that they would give him the opportunity to elevate that title and just keep him away from Swerve for a while.
Mm-hmm.
because that title really, I mean, since Orange Cassidy had it, I mean, I know a lot of people like Orange, and that's fine. I don't. I'm not going to argue with you about that, but it's the title really just hadn't seemed like it meant much. Ospreay was the guy that could have took that title, in my opinion, to the next level and made it actually mean something. But now you're going to put him against Swerve already, and I could be wrong, but all that money you're paying Ospreay and pushing him, you're not going to make him lay down to nobody already. And so, to me, we're seeing the last 25, 30 days of Swerve's title run, whatever it's going to be. And you're going to see Ospreay walking around with 2 belts, the world title and one just don't mean nothing. So, I wasn't impressed last night, but that's just me.
Gotcha. Connor?
Oh, I thought it was a pretty decent episode. The opening, Mercedes and this and that, they finally brought back the mysterious Who Attacked Mercedes. They kind of forgot about that. Like, I forgot about it. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I forgot about it. But they made it obvious because everyone knew it was going to be Julia Hart or Sky Blue, and they made it that obvious because I thought it was going to be Chris Statlander all along, or maybe Britt Baker. I don't know. Then they announced the women's match. I thought it was good to see Mercedes wrestle, but it didn't have to be a title match. Like, I mean, Sky Blue lost against Willow for the title. She lost against Chris Statlander for the title. She lost against Toni Storm for the title. Like, how does she get a title shot? Like, at this point, just do away with the rankings. Don't bring them back. Like, they don't mean anything.
I haven't seen them. I mean, have I missed them? Or have they been around and I just missed them?
They were talking about bringing them back, and then they used them for like 1 or 2 weeks, and then that was it. At the
beginning of the year, or at the end of the year, Tony said it. At the beginning of the year, they bring them back. They posted like 3 rankings since then. But then Tony's tweets, he mentions the rankings. I mean, you can't mention the rankings and not abide by the rankings. Like, they're just there. It's like, all right, the NBA, the Denver Nuggets are number 1, but we're not going to pretend they're number 1. We're just going to put someone else in number 1. But I mean, the match was pretty decent. It was a short match. What else happened? Moxley, I could have cared less about that. I already knew he was going to win.
He is so bad.
I mean, I like Moxley. He's one of my favorites in AEW. In WWE, he's been one of my favorites. But do something different, man. I mean, come on.
I mean, he was in tremendous shape when he popped in 5 years ago. And it's like, and I mean, this is where my criticism comes in AEW. It's like all those guys that, like, besides Adam Copeland, he looks like he's still hitting the gym. But like Moxley, Adam Cole, they come over and it's like, did you forget what weights were, bro? I mean, they look bad. And then, like, so I don't see the appeal in having Moxley walk around with the IWGP title. Cause I mean, to me, they put this international title on Ospreay, and you got Moxley walking around saying, I'm the best champion around here, blah, 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 blah. I like Swerve, and to me, they're just shitting all over him.
Yeah, I think the TNT title stuff was all right. I mean, I'd rather them do a tournament for it than just hand it to someone, because I really thought they were just going to give it to Jack Perry at first. But
until Christopher Daniels come out doing his Adam Pearce from Wish list.
Yeah, I mentioned on our podcast last night that Tony Khan's back now, so they can't just make a decision now because he's back. Like before, they were the EVPs; they could make a decision because he wasn't there. But now he's.
Did you see the clip of that fool rolling down the ramp when they grabbed him during Anarchy in the arena?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
He was on fire. But and Christopher Daniels said that they're gonna have qualifying matches. A ladder match will determine the new TNT Championship at Forbidden Door. And it's going to start on Friday Night Dynamite. New show, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Is Dynamite on Friday next week? And because of the NBA playoffs?
I think Friday Night Rampage, because they did mention during the show. Because I thought it was that night, but I didn't realize. I forgot about the Gauntlet match. I thought that was the qualifying match, but it's Friday Night Rampage. I'm so glad it's not interim champion. But the moment Christopher Daniels said interim, I was like, oh, golly, we got to go through this again.
Yeah, I'm glad they're not doing that too.
There's going to be a new champion crowned at Forbidden Door. I thought that was a pretty good segment. The Jericho stuff. I was late for the podcast last night, and I missed that, and I was so glad I missed that whole thing. But I forgot to mention, Swerve and Luchasaurus had they had a pretty good match. I'm surprised they went against each other just because I feel like that was over with Swerve and Christian Cage. Swerve obviously won. Yeah, the Moxley stuff I didn't care about. Jericho stuff I didn't care about. What else? The Statlander and Stokely stuff was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I'm like, so that's the Willow, Stokely, and Chris Statlander stuff is really the first
Really
stuff.
good. Yeah.
And that got me in because Willow would come out, and it wasn't that I disliked her. It's just I didn't care. And it's like this stuff they've been doing here lately. I'm like, oh, okay, let me see what's happening now. But you talk about Swerve and Luchasaurus. No, it wasn't a bad match. It just goes back to what Adam and I have been talking about the whole podcast. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, why did your world champion of all people need to do that? And while I'm on it, we go back to the pay-per-view. Is that 15 seconds of killing Adam Cole the only payoff we're going to get from this angle?
Well, apparently, forgot to mention that. I was expecting him on the show. Like, I was really excited because he's back. He's got to be on Dynamite. He's going to be on next week. But apparently, they did that to kind of squash that feud for right now. Just to put it on hold.
That's what I was asking. I'm like, he did that, and then
I
he
don't
said,
care about it anymore. Like,
well, I mean, it's just, I don't care. It's like they do the whole thing, and then
there's no payoff.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of like when Samoa Joe cut Wardlow's hair. It's like, okay, now what? Nothing.
What they're probably going to do is they're going to, whenever Adam Cole comes back, they're going to resume that, and they're going to have a match. I'm kind of done with that feud already now because they really should not have. They really should have thought about it. Like at World's End, they really should have thought about it, like doing that. Because now you revealed the people, but now it's just dragging on.
Well, I'll tell you what it reminded me of was when the Young Bucks, when Cole and O'Reilly and Fish turned on the Young Bucks, but Cole and O'Reilly were both hurt.
Yeah.
And that you didn't know how long they were going to be out. It's like, I don't mind you doing the angle, but don't do it when those guys are hurt. Do it when something can happen because of it. So if Adam Cole was, and I don't know, man, I mean, I wish the guy well, but it's like, to me, this broken ankle has carried on forever, and that he should have been back by now. So I hope it's not anything, more with him, but it's like, do stuff when do the turn when we're able to get a payoff from it. Not when somebody's going to be off TV for 6 months.
Yeah, Adam Cole was supposed to be back at Revolution. That's when he was supposed to be back. Jamie Hayter should have been back a long time ago. But she's now been out for a year. Hopefully they're both back pretty soon.
Look how long Britt Baker's been off TV.
And she's cleared. I don't know what's going on with that. That's another thing. Someone mentioned in the comments who can beat Mercedes. Britt Baker, I think, would be the perfect person whenever that happens. But the main event, I thought it was a pretty good main event. It's kind of like they did before. It was on Dynamite when they were in Dave's place, but it was determined who was going to go against Roderick Strong at Double or Nothing for the international title. And more people just kept coming out till it was over with. I wish it was less predictable than it was. Like Orange Cassidy was already, Trent laid him out. He shouldn't have been in it. Like they didn't bury Trent. I don't know how they go with that. Trent beat him up. He's bleeding. Like you had thought like that's it for him, but he comes out. At first I knew it was going to be him winning. Then Ospreay comes out because Ospreay won the first one. I wish they would have done something a little bit different. Had someone unexpected, like you didn't know who was going to win. Like, put a bunch of guys in there that you can't really pick. But I feel like Swerve is probably going to be a transitional champion. Sadly, they could have a time limit draw at the pay-per-view, and then all in. Ospreay then beats him, but Ospreay's winning that title pretty soon. I would have rather him been international champion and just done that. Because as I said in my video I had on AZ Canada, that he's the perfect person for that title to do what Pac did, take it to the UK. He lives in the UK. He can wrestle there with it and put these matches on YouTube or whatever and showcase these matches of him defending the title in all these promotions while also representing it in AEW.
Yeah, that was my hope for it, that he would keep it for a while and elevate the title.
And we talked about that on Canada this week, Matt and I, about how, with that title and then the promo he shoot with after winning it, mentioning all these promotions that he wants to defend it on. Like, that's what I was like, cool. I can't wait to see this. We're going to get great matches. We're going to get more prestige in that international title. And then last night, just kind of, I'm like, why is he going for the title at Forbidden Door? This should be a time where he's no longer signed with New Japan, and you need someone from a New Japan. I mean, hasn't that been the motif of the Forbidden Door? Is always a New Japan wrestler against an AEW wrestler in some type.
Yeah, but who does New Japan have left that's
true,
star worthy? I mean, Tony's basically took them all.
It's true.
They probably have someone like maybe David Finlay or that's someone.
Yeah, Dave Finlay, I forgot about him, but
Zack Sabre Jr. But they could have done something. But I have a feeling that Swerve's going to win or a time limit draw, and then all in will be title for title. Whoever wins,
or you might see, because they could very well have Nana interfere and have Swerve go back heel. I mean, because they're setting it up for Ospreay. They have been for a while to get him away from Don Callis. So.
Yeah,
I don't know how they're gonna explain the Brian Cage stuff then.
And I've got the perfect main event for a brand new promotion. Me versus Adam in a hair versus hair match with a special guest barber, and I'm gonna win. So you're getting your head shaved, sir.
That's fine. It's already gone.
You got a little stub happening back.
I got a little bit. I got the Homer Simpson going. For me, last night, I guess I could give my 2 cents on Dynamite, unless you were still going, Connor.
Oh no, I'm just. I was going to say, I
thought it was a pretty disappointing episode. I mean, there were some high points and low points, but for me, some of that stuff was hard to get into. But yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I had to watch the last hour, the first hour of it when I got home from bowling because I didn't get home until 9:30. So I watched the first hour and then went to bed and had to go to work today. And then actually, before I came on tonight, I watched that last hour when I got home from work today. It wasn't the best Dynamite after a pay-per-view. There were some sketchy moments, some iffy moments in it. Like they did cancel that supposed planned Mariah May Saraya match and replaced it with the whole Mercedes and Sky Blue, which I don't mind them kind of starting that off with that, but you didn't need to have it as a match in the show or for the title. It kind of feels like you're just putting those other two women in the back burner for it. Other than that, the Learning Tree TV time I could have done without. Like Matt and I said on Tuesday, we respect the world of Chris Jericho. I mean, he's a game changer in professional wrestling, but we do feel like it's time for him to hang it up and kind of move on to something different and let these younger guys come through and kind of make a face and name for themselves. I understand he's trying to do this whole like mentorship, but kind of moved on with that. The Swerve versus Luchasaurus was just weird to me. Like, I don't know why they put him in that match with Luchasaurus other than, I'm going to cut his hair, get some payback from when they cut mine. That's all I can think of.
Be a theme tonight.
Huh? The hair cutting? Yeah, it seems a good theme. I will say I did enjoy the gauntlet match. It was really cool because you got to see, a lot of people show up that you didn't think you were going to show. I mean, I didn't expect Leo Rush to come back, appear in AEW, and then Mystico showing up. I'm a huge fan of Mystico. I mean, I think he's talented. Back in WWE, he botched a lot, but he's really upped his game since going back to CMLL. And so it was great to see him come in and there. Obviously Jay White always, I'm glad they need to do something with him. But yeah, the Ospreay thing was kind of crazy of him winning, considering he just won to win the international title. I'm loving the Chris Stokely thing. The fact that her promo said, I'm not protecting anyone else now. Y'all need protection from me. That's the Chris Statlander I want. The mean one is like, I don't give a damn about you women. I'm going to come after you. Like, it's great. That's heel 101. And to have also a mouthpiece like Stokely, brilliant. And then also, like, I don't get this Don Callis thing of Trent being in the Don Callis family. And it's like, dude, he lost twice to Orange Cassidy. So I don't get it. Like, I know it's his heel thing. He's a part of this now, but it's like, how further can you bury this guy? You got to give him something. That's
one thing about AEW. Sorry to interrupt. But one thing about AEW we talked about before is when they beat somebody, they beat them flat. There's no reason to continue the story. It's like, if you want to continue the story, give it a, messed up finish, somebody interfering, somebody hitting a bare turnbuckle, getting hit with something, 400 different ways you can do it, but you don't just beat somebody flat and then expect people to want to see a match again. It takes away the stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that. And for the main event, like, it was okay for what it was. Again, I don't know why Sky Blue's getting another title shot. I guess other because she attacked Mercedes. Mercedes like, we'll bring it on. And I did not expect. I know they're trying to get Mercedes a challenge for Forbidden Door, obviously. And you could have gone different routes of who you could have brought. I out of left field, I did not see Stephanie Vequar coming out. Like, I had no idea. Like, and if anybody doesn't know who she was, her and Mercedes actually had a match before over in New Japan, and Mercedes handled her pretty well. But a little bit a story behind that. She now holds the title that Mercedes actually hurt her ankle in trying to win.
Right.
So the title that was set up for Mercedes is now around her waist, because people have to remember Willow won it, and then I believe Julia beat her, and then Julia lost to Stephanie. So it comes full circle now for that. So I think that's an interesting matchup, and I think they can go a little longer than the last match they had, because I think it was like 10 minutes, 10 or 12 minutes that they had the last match. I think this one can go 20. I don't know why, because they're the way both the women are built and their styles kind of clash to where you can push it a little bit, and give them a little more time. So I am kind of excited. Again, I really wish it was like a Jamie Hayter or Britt Baker return, because like you said, Connor, they're healthy. They should be cleared to come back, and see them back in the ring. So that's just basically my take on Dynamite last night.
Well, the last thing I'll say too, as soon as Ospreay come out, I'm like, oh, they're doing this way too soon.
Yeah.
But I did have high hopes. I was hoping that they were going to give that spot to Jay White, because Ospreay did not have to be pinned to lose that match. Mm-hmm. So I had a lingering little bit of hope back there going, okay, all right, so like have Ospreay on the outside of the ring, have Jay White pin Mystico or Pac or somebody, Nope.
I also wish Pac would have won, or Jay White. Like, that'd have been something different.
Oh, and then lastly, I forgot one more, the segment of the Elite. I mean, the only highlight of that segment that I enjoyed was Okada telling the crowd to shut up, bitches. Yep, that was the only thing I enjoyed. It was like, oh my God, that's great. That and you can see the Young Bucks and Jack just lose it, because they're like, oh, that's just great. Like, and yeah, to go with the Christopher Daniel thing about the Pierce, Make-A-Wish Pierce, the Wish Pierce, of GMs, the interim EVP. I kind of see what they're doing. They're trying to not make Tony as much like of a presence, so they need someone as a voice for him. So I can kind of see them like, okay, let's just use Christopher Daniels. How long that's going to last, who the frick knows. But yeah, no, that whole segment was crazy. And I was with you, Connor. I thought they were literally just going to give the TNT title to Jack Perry. I was going to be like, that's just funny. That is just funny. Like, but yeah, no. So that's pretty much it on that.
Well, I mean, it's been done before. You remember Eric Bischoff handing Triple H the world title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but no, overall, yeah, no, it was okay. Wasn't the best, wasn't the worst, but it could have been better. As for tonight, I did enjoy this topic. I'm glad we could talk about some of our fond memories of, defunct territories, defunct promotions that we grew up with. I do want to thank you guys for joining me tonight, especially everybody in the comments. Thank you guys for all commenting, liking.
And everybody tell Adam happy early birthday.
Happy early birthday to me. Yay. I'll be 18 tomorrow. So
I'll come spank you.
Oh, stop. But yeah, no, thank you guys again. We do appreciate it. Make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe, share, find us on YouTube, Twitch. We're on Twitter, Instagram. I'm trying to remember where else we're everywhere, so
TikTok, you name it, we're out there.
TikTok, Spotify, we're everywhere. On Wednesdays, we always do our live reactions to Dynamite. Tuesdays, we have our AEZ Canada with our gracious host, Matt. He's always great to talk with. Thursdays, obviously, you can always find us here. For the time being, I don't know if we're doing the live reactions to Collision and Rampage.
We do Collision. Like Rampage, I've kind of scrapped.
Okay.
Just because of me and Mr. Jacob started a sister channel. We did the Royal Rumble reaction on there. We've started to do some SmackDown stuff, but we do Collision. But if there's a night that for whatever we'll do Rampage, but we're really going to be doing Dynamite and Collision. It's
Okay.
just too much trying to 9 o'clock at night trying to fit all that in.
Understandable. Yeah. No. So make sure you guys check some of that stuff out. We do have interviews on our website, or not our website, our YouTube page. With the Von Erich boys, the sons of Eric Von Erich, Kevin Von Erich, Eugene. We've got Blue Meanie. We've got Tony Deppen, which was one of my favorite interviews. I love that guy. Talking to that guy. But we do have some interviews planned coming up. I don't know if anything's official right now, Connor, that you can announce. If not, I know
there is one interview I can. Not a date, but they will be on within the next 2 weeks. I can go into their name because I actually met them in person. They gave me a hug, and Victoria will be on here pretty soon, within the next 2 weeks. We haven't had a women's wrestler in a long time since we started this podcast. Our first 2 interviews was women, and that was when we first started. Amber Nova and Brooke Havoc. But we're going to be having Victoria, Tara, if you know her from TNA. She'll be on here within the next 2 weeks. She'll be on here. She's pretty much committed to coming on, and she's very excited. Probably overly excited. Give me a hug in person. So,
yeah, awesome. Yeah, we're excited too. Yeah,
absolutely.
But other than that, again, thank you guys for joining us tonight. Again, join us again next week. We're gonna have some fun topics. Like Jason said. Just wrestling moments that made us feel again will be next week. So thank you, Jason, for that topic. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your night and the whole weekend. Tomorrow is Happy Friday, so make sure you guys enjoy it. If there is nothing else, as always, to you guys, thank you and good night to you guys.
Happy birthday.